welcome to this Frequency Matters podcast. I'm Pat Hindle, and today I'm talking with Gianluca Redolfi, CCO at Sateliot. Welcome, Gianluca.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
So, IoT is really transforming different industries from smart agriculture to smart cities or maritime applications, but there's a wide range of solutions out there. How are companies determining which IoT connectivity services to use for their connected devices since there are so many choices out there?
Well, first of all, yes, that's something that we are seeing is happening. The IoT devices is really increasing a lot. I would say that this is like the unstoppable willingness of the human beings to measure everything that started at the beginning at home and then on the streets, on the cities, and so on, and now it's basically everywhere because if we can measure something, we can improve it. So you can find a lot of companies, hundreds of thousands, probably more than millions of companies that are relying on measurement of different devices to then collect information and give an actionable result to the final user. Okay, that could be the farmer about the crop of fields, so the field of crops and so on. So that's in a huge expansion. Just on cellular, we expect the right number to be between 2 to 3 billion IoT devices in the world, and it's growing really a lot. Now, depending on the type of IoT device, the type of connectivity is different. Okay? If you want to have a lot of information, you're gonna probably go for LTE or any other solution that is very focused on having full control, real time, and bandwidth. We are specifically at Sateliot focused on narrowband IoT. Narrowband IoT is a protocol specifically designed, it is the leading protocol in the world for applications, massive deployments of applications that do not require a lot of data transmission. And you don't need a lot of data to know what's the temperature, what's the wind speed, and what's the soil moisture, and so on to take action based on that. So that's the protocol that we are using, and we are extending this protocol of the from the coverage of the telecom operators.
So you mentioned NB-IoT as your specialty, and that's specifically designed for applications that don't require a lot of data or have low latency. And what applications are well suited for this protocol and why?
The typical use cases where we see a lot of interest are the ones where there's a little bit of delay tolerance, and then as we scale up, we're going to be able to deliver almost real time. So we're going to serve more use cases. The typical massive applications are a lot of in logistic, end-to-end tracking of packages, boxes, containers, cargoes in general. There's a lot of in agriculture, livestock, maritime. So there are a lot of, I mean, but then you can go to many other, maybe we don't have in our mind, like follow up of the bees, hives, and fisheries, and many others that are maybe not so popular, but they're already existing and they're very relevant for that specific industry or sector.
Yeah, the use cases are wide ranging. I did see a lot of them on your website, so we'll talk about those a little later. 3GPP released 17 standardized non-terrestrial networks so devices could communicate directly with satellites. How did this enable Sateliot to launch the first LEO satellite constellation based on the 5G standard, allowing unmodified commercial cellular NB-IoT NTN devices to connect from space? What was involved in setting that whole thing up?
Well, that's the story of the company basically. So so we started back in 5 years ago, and we always thought that it was not possible that the satellite industry didn't have disruption yet. So if you go back and you check the 80s, early 90s, and the mobile telephony, that was very common to have local networks nationwide, probably just one provider, no interoperability between the different networks. So you would need to basically even manufacture different handsets. With the GSMA and the GSM-GSMA standard, basically one standard is everywhere in the world. And this allows to have a lot of economy of scale. So now you can buy an iPhone or a Samsung Galaxy and basically use it in China, in Korea, in whatever you want. Okay, in the US, in Peru, it's the same everywhere. Okay, so prices went down a lot, and that's what made possible to go from the few thousands that in any country were able to have the telephony before to what we have now, which is massively deployed. So we thought that that was the way to go also on the satellite industry. To do that, we got into the 3GPP, which is the association that is setting up the standards mainly for the telecom operators, and and we've been contributing. So the 3GPP is an association where any decision is taken based on the contribution of all the parties. So we've been the company from space providing the largest amount of contributions to the new release, the release of NTN, the non-terrestrial network. And finally, it took almost 4 years. The new release has been finalized in June 2022. And the standard, 5G standard from space exists. It's a standard. It means that a device, a cellular device that is able to connect to cellular network can also connect to the space segment without basically any modification in the hardware. Okay, or most of them, depending on the frequency allocation in the front end. Okay, but that's a big step forward, because if you think that IoT devices, I said, between 2 to 3 billion in cellular, but then if you look at the market now of IoT devices connected through satellites, we talk about few millions. So what do we expect that now the IoT connectivity being basically at the same price point as the cellular and using very inexpensive devices can bring any use case to be able to work also on satellite. So we expect really hundreds of millions of devices connecting over the next years in space.
Yeah, it brings together a whole new frontier. So I did see that you have some partnerships that you're working with Telefonica and AWS. Can you tell us about those?
Yeah, so we've been working on our solution. That's the first time in history that it is done. So we had to validate and to show to the world that it was possible to have roaming over space segment on NTN 5G narrowband IoT. Okay, so we put together all the different actors of it. So we demonstrated with the Monica and the final commercial device that it was we were able to pass over the package from the final device back to the core of Telefonica. So this means that it goes to our satellites. So our satellites go to the ground station. It goes to our core network, which is based on AWS, and then goes back to Telefonica. This includes also, of course, the authentication, the two-step authentication solution that we have on roaming. In other words, what we are doing, instead of going directly to the final customer and sell it directly ourselves, we are providing roaming extension, so roaming coverage extension to the carriers, the mobile telecom operators of the world. And that's what we demonstrated with Telefonica, with AWS, and we also had the supervision of the European Space Agency validating it.
Well, that's great. Some powerful partners, which takes it to get it done that way.
Yeah,
So how
yeah.
else is Sateliot involved in the IoT market? Are there other things you're doing?
We are very focused on our solution. So we are building the first constellation of own satellites, which is already a big achievement. Specifically for the IoT market, we are seeing that there's a huge demand. So we already have a lot of demand. We already signing contracts with the final customers. We are already signing roaming agreements with many telecom operators in the world. And we also seen a lot of announcements from the chipset manufacturers and handset manufacturers of including narrowband IoT features, possibilities in these cellular phones. I expect that this is going to happen in the next years. We're going to see more and more phones that are narrowband IoT enabled, and this will allow basically to any phone going out of cellular coverage to be seamlessly uh, able to connect to 5G from space. That we can provide. Again, it is a standard, so we are not going to be the only one. We are the first one.
As you said, there's a wide range of industries involved here. And I saw some really interesting case studies that you had. Maybe you can tell us about a few of those. I saw something about monitoring drinking water to livestock to the electric grid, etc.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. I can tell you, we are every single day in contact with many service providers that are basically the companies that are installing the devices and collecting information and give it to the final customer, to the final user. There's a lot going on. Artificial intelligence is taking a big role on it because, of course, you have so much information that you can collect, that you can analyze. You can go back in history on what happened on that specific similar case. So there are a lot of things happening on the value-added service providers. Yeah, I can mention a few of them. For instance, livestock is a huge one. Livestock can be anything, but just in terms of cattle, can you imagine the market is probably 1 to 1.5 billion cattle in the world. They're not going to be digitalized overnight, but it's a huge market. And you can have different solutions that are proposed currently in the market that are already on the cattle. There is the ear tag, or there is a collar, and basically the solution allow the farmer on detecting many things apart from, of course, the location of the cow. You can detect pregnancy, illnesses, and many other things, including what is called virtual fencing. You know that instead of putting the physical fences, you can have low powered, electricity on the collar that stimulates the cow not to go beyond a certain virtual limit. It's very useful, especially if you have extensive livestock. So you want them to be a few days or a week in one place, another week another place, and so on, so that they're not really killing all the grass. It is just one of the examples. So we see it very popular in countries like the US, of course, in Brazil, Argentina, South Africa, Australia. I mean, the typical places where you have a lot of cattle, big extensions, and it's very tough otherwise to have connectivity for those type of solutions.
And so, how does IoT help with sustainability? You mentioned AI and data. Is it help in that regard?
Yeah, I mean, that's another example. It can be on agriculture. So they are claiming to save 30% of water. Whenever you go into smart agriculture, you can save about 30% of water, increasing the production and lowering the emission of CO2. So that's because the coordinated effort of doing and applicating exactly what is required is making the efficiency going up, and therefore reducing what I said, the water, the trips to go and check on the field of things, and well, and many other aspects.
And so, how do you see this technology evolving over the next 3 to 5 years? It seems like we're kind of at a tipping point here where it really is going to take off.
Oh yeah, we are at the brink of a revolution, I can tell you. That's exactly what happened in the mid 90s with the prepaid SIM cards everywhere in the world, where basically we passed from almost nobody had a mobile phone to everybody had a mobile phone in 5 years. We are seeing it happening in IoT. You know, there are a lot of IoT applications that do not require basically to be connected through satellite. They are smart city solutions, so that's fine. They don't need connectivity beyond the cellular coverage. But there are a lot of others that are already existing and have a limitation, and that limitation is that they cannot be connected at a reasonable price outside the cellular coverage. And we're talking about 2 billion minimum of connection that can potentially be interested in connecting through satellite. So we're going to see this growing up exponentially in the next 3 to 5 years.
Wow, those are big numbers. So looking forward to seeing what happens. So thank you, Gianluca, for talking with me today about the IoT connectivity solutions from Sateliot. Very interesting technology. I know this market is evolving, so hopefully we can have you back in the future for an update. To our audience, you can find more podcasts at podcast.microwavejournal.com. Thanks for listening.